What if I told you Rhajat Fire Emblem isn't my favorite character in Fates, nor is she my favorite Fire Emblem character? No, what if I told you Rhajat Fire Emblem is my favorite fictional character, period? Rhajat is probably the most actively disliked Fire Emblem character, not counting characters you're supposed to hate. She's from Fates, arguably the franchise's most controversial mainline game. She's based on a controversial character from Awakening, Tharja. Even Tharja fans aren't fond of her, perceiving her as an inferior copy. She's the only Sapphic option players are given in Fates. This was a perfect storm to create the reputation Rhajat now has in the fandom. What I want to accomplish with this video is to explain why I love this character, as well as an analysis. As far as I can tell, no one on YouTube has talked about this character in great length, at least positively. My goal is less to convince people to like her, but more to explain why I love her so much. Let's start by introducing the subjects of today's video. Rhajat is a second-generation character from Fire Emblem Fates, the child of Hayato. She stalks the main protagonist and is obsessed with hexes. Sound familiar, Awakening fans? Rhajat Fire Emblem, known the world over for being Tharja Who. She's based on a very popular character from Fire Emblem Awakening, Tharja. You see, there was a Japanese popularity poll that ranked the most popular first-gen Awakening characters and the most popular second-gens. The winners for the first were Chrom, Tharja, Gaius, and Cordelia. The winners for second gens were Lucina, Severa, Ingo, and Owain. Aside from Lucina, the second gens were brought back in Fates under the names Zelina, Lasso, and Odin. They traveled from Elise to Fates Landia thanks to the God and Uncos. More details given in the Hidden Truth DLC that's no longer obtainable, but not the point. As for the first gens, besides Chrom, they were given pre-incarnations, Rhajat, Asugi, and Keldor respectively. Alternate versions of themselves that will one day be reincarnated into their Awakening versions. For anyone who's asking how I know that, or wants to correct me and say Awakening comes first in the timeline, look at Rhajat's death quote. She explicitly references meeting Corrin again in Awakening as Robin. Not to mention her reincarnating into Tharja and Corrin into Robin is a plot point in their Japanese support. There is really no other way to interpret this in my opinion, which means, yes, Severa can give birth to a person who will one day die and reincarnate into her mom, who then in the future gives birth to Severa. Fate is a trip. That's why Rhajat exists, for better or worse, and who she is. She's based on an Awakening character, who while she's very popular, also has many detractors due to her abuse of her daughter Noir and her husband, as well as the fact that she stalks her avatar, Robin. Like just about anyone who played Awakening while waiting for Fates, my first impression of the character wasn't positive. I already at the time hated Tharja, and now you're putting her in Fates too? And she's the only option I've got if I want to be gay? It was infuriating. I was envious of how men got a unique character and women got sloppy seconds. Oh, how the tables have turned. Hey, at least we got engaged. Like any Sapphic, I was thirsty for queer content in games, especially at the time I mainly played Nintendo games. Not the best place to go for queerness. So I shrugged my shoulders and looked up how to get Rhajat. I married off Hayato, though admittedly I don't remember the who. I fought my way through her paradox to save my goth wife. Once recruited, I read a support with F. Corrin, and it was fine. It was okay. I'm just happy to have a WOW option in Fire Emblem. I remember wanting to have a class where I could use magic and my sword, and at the time I didn't own Conquest, nor did I know that Norinobu was exactly what I wanted. So I changed to a horse unit. I want to say it was Dark Knight, and imagine Rhajat riding the horse with Corrin while hugging her. Gay memories. Eventually, I found out about her reputation. I saw everyone talking about Rhajat as she poisoned their water supply, burned their crops, and delivered a plague onto their houses. My feelings went from, she's okay, to fuck you, she's great. Don't get me wrong, being a contrarian isn't why I like her now. It was more like the spark. If I remember correctly, I looked more into her support and found someone special. I realized she's not just Tharja 2. She was her own person. She was sweet, if aloof. She was socially awkward, but really just wanted friends. Not to mention I found out about the Japanese version, where support with F-Corn was significantly different. I found out that the localization made her a bit more rude and harsh to my chagrin. I found out how sweet she was to Kana, unlike how Tharja treated Morgan. It was over. I loved this character. Anime a firm believer that putting down one character to lift another is obnoxious. Just talk about why you like the character. I want to avoid that here as well. I want to try and do my best to talk about differences without saying Tharja bad. Personally, I do like Tharja enough nowadays. I'm only going to be talking about Tharja in Awakening because, call me crazy, but I feel post-Fate's Tharja acts more like Rhajat. Some may argue that liking Rhajat is pointless when Tharja does the same thing, just better. I don't agree. Tharja does things differently. Originally, I was just going to sum up a Reddit analysis I made years ago on the differences, but I don't want to go into detail, so I'm going to be reading for you all a somewhat revised version of that post. I guess you could consider this a 2-for-1 video, since we're not just analyzing Rhajat, we're also talking about how she's different from Tharja. Let's not mince words. They both are meant to evoke sexy. They both have abs going on and semi-exposed midriffs. Both have long hair, and as far as Heroes is concerned, both of their hair colors are black. Let's get more into the differences here. Tharja isn't wearing much, only really covering her privates. Rhajat, on the other hand, wears a crop top and pants. Both of their breasts are prominent. Rhajat, however, covers hers up more. She has slight cleavage, but her hair covers it up, only being shown on her room model. I don't think this says much about them as people. Tharja is shown to just not care, but when it was pointed out to her, she was, to quote the Hex, mortified. So Tharja most likely wears very little because she was raised in a desert. Rhajat's deep roam looked bad, but she made it that way. If Tharja's design was a turnoff, Rhajat might be more your speed, but in the end, their clothes don't really mean much. Women can wear what they want. Tharja wearing so little doesn't make her a bad person. Stalking. Rhajat, Tharja, doesn't matter. It's creepy, it's uncomfortable, it's just there for stupid fan service. But I feel there's a difference in their logic. Rajat's attachment to Korin is very clearly because they saved her life, but there's a line I find interesting in their Japanese post-parallel conversation. That's a wonderful name. I'll remember it for the rest of my life. Thank you for saving me, Kamui. I owe you my life. That's the first time anyone's been so nice to me. I'll follow you forever. Whether you're sleeping or awake or in combat, I'll never take my eyes off you for even a moment. I'm glad we met, Kamui. That name never tastes any less sweet no matter how many times I say it. At first glance, and yeah, second, it's creepy. Even the kind-hearted Korin is unnerved. There's one part I find interesting. I owe you my life. That's the first time anyone's been so nice to me. I'll follow you forever. Rajat seems to see her stalking as a gift in some way. Let's try English. You're this Korin that Father's been talking about. Yes? Thank you for rescuing me, Korin. I owe you my life. No one's ever been willing to sacrifice themselves for me before. I owe you my life, all of it, every hour, every day, until the end. In this scene, Rajat uses her more genuine smile, not her more creepy smirk. You can argue the English team is trying to make her look better, or they misinterpreted the Japanese dialogue. Fates isn't known for an amazing localization. But I like to think this is what she meant in Japan, too. She stalks them because she wants to be there for them, to thank them for what he did. We know she doesn't feel loved by her father, so from her perspective, she found someone who genuinely loved her. We'll come back to her in a second. On to Tharja. Tharja's reasons are more vague. It's hard to tell. She said it's because she loves him, but it's hard to tell if she means, I love you so I'll follow you, or I love you so I want to protect you. I lean towards the former, because in Vike support she says she follows because he's fascinating. Something else of note, in both English and Japanese, granted in different contexts, Rajat acknowledges her stalking is uncomfortable. In English, she apologizes for it. Something to note is that this specific apology does not exist in Japan. Now, onto Japan, since I know some might not accept a localization-only piece of information. You must be disgusted, having a girl stalk you, then confess her love to you after all this time. Now, this could be interpreted as Rajat's issue that a girl was stalking, not the stalking itself. And this is true, but I think she's admitting that it's wrong. This delves into headcanon territory, but I think Rajat saying it's wrong but still doing it is because she sees it as a necessary evil. She knows it's uncomfortable, feels she has to do it. Not to say she has a problem with it. Girl's kinda edgy. Tharja in no support acknowledges that it's an issue. Tharja stalks seemingly for her own reasons. Rajat stalks to protect Korin. Possession. What a taskmaster. I thought he'd never finish. Look at Robin with those fools. I hope they realize they belong to me. I suppose I could curse them all. God, that would take forever. It would be easier to just curse Robin. A stink spell, perhaps? If they caused people to pass out and retch, I'd have them all to myself. Except that they would smell like an outhouse. Maybe a different plan. Tharja seems to be more possessive than Rajat. At no point to my knowledge does Rajat ever try and stop Korn from interacting with others. Some may counter with Rajat's Japanese skinship lines, where she says she may have to curse the next person Korn invites, or how she wants to put up a barrier so only she can enter. Note that obviously she never does this. I think she is thinking out loud, plus she says in another line, I know you belong to everyone. So she does acknowledge that she doesn't own them. However, this is after Robin has been friendly for a rather long time, so it's possible she's just frustrated and lonely. Not to mention, but I do wish you had spoken up sooner. I was wasting all my herbs all this time with that curse I put on you to keep girls away. Even if it's not Corrin, and it's an Essabort, which the canon information in them is debatable, it doesn't change the fact that Rajat does the same thing to Karagi. On the other hand, though, Rajat is keeping Karagi away from potential partners. Tharja is considering keeping Robin away from anyone else. Both are still terrible things to do, however. In addition, you cursed me? Yes, of course. Is something wrong? Rajat's reaction isn't a smirk or laugh. This reaction is shockingly innocent, as if this was the most obvious thing in the world. This leads to what I want to talk about. Rajat seems to not have a strong grasp of right and wrong as her awakening counterpart. I wouldn't say Rajat has no morality whatsoever, but she seems genuinely concerned about this. I believe Rajat is meant to be younger than Tharja, based on their appearances and mannerisms, both likely meant to be at youngest 17. I like to think Tharja's around 25-ish. Tharja, most likely due to being more experienced, seems to understand morality more. Both are possessed, but Rajat less so. Let's talk a bit more about morality. You thought I may be a Plegian spy? Yes, I figured as much. But you should know that I never liked that dastard Gangrel. What kind of king would sacrifice his realm to suit his own twisted goals? It's a travesty he ever took the throne. She's shown disgust towards Gangrel in his actions. She tells Vike, admittedly not at first, that she's going to give him a love potion. She didn't have to do that. She doesn't force the potion down his throat either. She seems she's not going to force anything on him. Compare this to Rajat, who in DLC, if Nick is her mom, explains she's going to hex Korn to love her after Nick forces it out of her. Tharja seems to have a stronger sense of right and wrong than Rajat does. Confidence. Tharja is insulted multiple times and never really reacts. When she gets angry, it's usually because she's annoyed. Tharja rarely, if ever, is offended by being called creepy. When Asugi calls Rajat's love for Korn creepy, she hexes him. Tharja seems more confident in herself. In her support with Rickon, she says she likes herself the way she is. Rajat seems much more sensitive. This also plays back into her being younger. In addition, Rajat wasn't born into being a dark mage. She learned how to do it. Tharja was born into it, so it makes sense why she's thicker-skinned. Dark mages seem to have a bad reputation in the Awakening world, so she was raised to not care or grew to not care. Rajat is more sensitive than Tharja. Both believe their avatar can save the world. No, but seriously, as I touched on earlier, Tharja is more clingy. Robin plays a bigger role in Tharja's character than Korrin does to Rajat. Granted, this might be because Korrin can be Rajat's mother, so just in case, she doesn't mention her much. Fates has enough incest as it is. We don't need Rajat constantly thirsting after her mom. But anyway, Korrin is brought up by Rajat in 4 supports, not counting her Korrin supports. Hayato and Shigure, where she gets an offhand mention, Asugi, where she mentions stalking, and of course, Kana. Tharja, must be fair to her to ignore Frederick and Vike, because he makes a physical appearance there. 5 times. Naui, Gaius, Libra, Lonku, Henry. Only once more. Context is important though. Let's ignore Naui because it's an offhand mention. Gaius leads to Tharja hexing him, which is a prominent theme in the rest of their supports. Because he refused to help her get a strain of Robin's hair, it shows her obsession is stronger. Henry is actually not bad, she just says to put Robin's life over her own. Libra is told he's not as important as Robin. We can ignore Lonku though, because it's not really that important there, it's just Tharja being a loop. Only counting prominent mentions, Rajat has Kana and Asugi, Libra has Tharja, Gaius, and Henry, so it's really only once more. However, it makes perfect sense to come up with Kana, and for Asugi, he need help sneaking up on people. With Tharja, the Libra bit is uncomfortable, Gaius is for pettiness, and Henry shows her dedication. I feel this truly does show that Tharja is more obsessed. In Tharja's support with Robin, it follows similar beats to male Korn and Rajat, with the Avatar being uncomfortable. Their attachment to their stalker comes from different places though. With Robin, it's for saving them. With Korn, it's realizing the reason why Tharja's been following them. Rajat, again, isn't as obsessed, and seems to have a more innocent reason for stalking than Tharja. Rajat loves Korn for saving her life. Tharja seems to be because she remembers them being close in a past life, aka Fates. Friends in love. There aren't really many supports where Tharja's really befriending anyone. Stalin's in a friendship, but Stahl's a really nice guy. I'd also argue Naui. Tharja isn't really going out of her way to make friends. A lot of her supports end with more of a mutual respect than a full-out friendship, or at least the friendships are more low-key. At no point does Tharja go out of her way to form a friendship. She doesn't seem to see them as important. It's another way Robin is more important to her character. He's the exception of this, the main one at least, that she shows serious affection to. As for love, Tharja doesn't seem completely interested in her romance options all the time. Besides Robin, she never seemed super into it. The only other one of note is Vi, because she tries to use a potion on. Maybe Frederick as well. This is especially true with Donald, who she straight up says she wants for a servant. Rajat has many supports about friendship. Soki's support is just a convoluted way of getting a new friend. Be Thomas about the two of them bonding. Really, the only supports that don't end in a friendship is Ophelia, and the Japanese version Kaldori. While she denies it, she really wants friends. This is quite possibly the most striking difference between them. Rajat has a passionate love for others if she can get close to them. Tharja doesn't seem to, at least to the same extent. As for love, Rajat seems much more into her partners who aren't Korn versus her reincarnation. Whether this is because she's less fixated on them or because Rajat is just better expressing her emotions is debatable. The only S-support where she doesn't seem as into them is Asugi, and even then it seems to be more so inexperienced than the fact that she doesn't care. None of her S-supports involve her threatening them or making conditions aside from the fact that they have to love her. Rajat is more attached to people in general. Rajat seems to not care much for anyone who isn't Robin. Arga and Rajat both have an affinity for hexes, but looking at their supports, Rajat hexes one person with no warning for her own selfish reasons, who is Karagi. Tharja has three, technically four. Gaius, who she hexes because he refused to steal Robin's hair, Stall for information, Virion for testing, and Libra, while he consents, she says that she was planning on hexing a random person. Karagi's act was to keep girls away from him, which is selfish even if it's implied she didn't know any better. That ties back again to the morality point. Tharja is testing on Gaius. She outright says Stoll will die if he doesn't tell the truth. Virions were harmless, and Libra isn't really bad, but it doesn't change the fact that she was going to use it on others. But the biggest takeaway is that Tharja was willing to murder two allies. Granted, with Henry, she was trying to see if he was a spy. None of Rajat's hexes are that bad. Even if they really upset her or warned a lot, they're never life-threatening. They're more petty. Like in Percy's support, he gives a shopkeeper drooling mouth. Or Shiro, he's given a stuffy nose. Annoying, but not threatening. Even talking about Ophelia, who was warned and was clearly annoying her, only got very minor things. Even looking at Tharja's threats, changing a character's species is much more disturbing. Rajat also seems to be more inexperienced. She offers to help others like Shigure, but needs some interesting things. Tharja can go as far as to let Gregor talk to his dead brother without needing anything from Gregor specifically. You could argue that's why her hexes are less threatening. She just doesn't know how to do them. This also plays into her learning about dark mages versus Tharja, who was born into them. Although, she can kill people with her mind. If she wanted more threatening hexes, I think she could do them. There is only one time where Rajat plays with lives. Karagi, or more specifically in Japanese, accepts his offer to find ingredients for her, wonders if he'll be okay, and gets carried away after a bit. To drive the point home that Rajat doesn't hex innocent people much, she intentionally scares off people in her Shigure support so they won't be hexed, but we also know she hates being alone. Rajat just isn't as into hurting people with hexes as Tharja, which leads into our next point. Kindness. This shocked me. Tharja helps more people than Rajat. This is based on doing something out of kindness, not paying them back for anything, or having an ulterior motive. Tharja has a whopping 6. She refuses to help Riggin with hexes because she's scared of hurting him. She breaks the news to Naui very gently. At the end of Libra's support, she tells him to be happy. She wants to help Kellen find out if his family is okay. She nurses Robin back to health, and she plays therapist for Lanku and wants to help him get rid of his phobia. This is probably the biggest thing that made me respect Tharja more. If we remove the payback thing, it goes up to 8, where she helps Frederick and Virion after they're hurt protecting her. Rajat only has 5. With Shigure, she gives condolences and offers to hex his sadness away. She gives Mitama a charm. She heals Ace even after he insults her. In Japanese, she heals Conan's cavity with no strings attached, and in her generic mother support, works up a cure for her village despite being seen as evil by them. As for why she doesn't care here, I assume Rajat doesn't care about her perception if it's by strangers. By friends or allies, it upsets her. Tharja is without a doubt the more helpful one, but as I said earlier, Rajat is less aggressive and more friendly to her allies. Who is the nicer of the two really depends on your own perspective. Quite possibly the most controversial aspect about Tharja, and what most Rajat fans point to in explaining why they prefer her, family. Tharja seems to be on good terms with her family if Callum's support is to be believed. She mentions her umbilical cord was cut with a hex, implying we're finally here. Her treatment of Noir in her head might be seen as normal or a rite of passage. She might not even be trying to be abusive, but she still ignores her daughter's clear hatred of it and her father's woes. She even punishes Nora's father for it. But she also says she doesn't want to teach her dark magic. It's obvious she keeps her away from dark magic but doesn't mind hexing her. Honestly, I think Tharja's treatment of Nora is out of character. I was forced on her by the writers for comedy. Let's be real. Female abusers, especially in Japan, are seen as jokes. Nora's treatment is intended to be funny, but to many, myself included, it's not. It'd be more in character if she was overprotective. She even walks away when her daughter is talking to her. People kind of wish she became abusive after her father died, and only future Tharja abused her. This fanon is so widely believed it's mentioned on TV tropes on her character page. Nora's father support debunks these both. Nora says her father was abused too. Unless her father is brought back from the dead, which is impossible, this can't be true. Her father's support even starts with Noir talking about how she was just hexed. One could argue Henry is also disturbed by her actions, but Henry didn't know his parents, so it's possible he didn't know if this was normal Dark Mage stuff. Either way, her husband warns her and tries to reason with her and gets hexed for his troubles. I'm going to be straight here. Tharja is an abusive mother and a domestic abuser. Even if played for laughs, Nora's character revolves around her being an abuse victim. She also acts very dismissive towards Morgan, so both of her children aren't treated well. In fact, Tharja's generic dialogue to Morgan and Noir mentions hexing, which means Morgan is a victim too. Let's move on to Rajat, starting with her parents since we actually know them. Her relationship with her father is rocky. She feels she was abandoned by him, which is probably why she's so attached to people. It might be why she's so stuck between not wanting friends, because that's what she used to, and wanting them because she wants to be loved. In the end, though, she does adore him. As shown with Heirs of Fate, where she does show guilt for her father's death and vows to save him from Anonkos' control. Rajat, as a second gen and a woman, has no child. However, she does have female Kana. She actually really loves her and picks her happiness over a hex. It's like night and day. If people say it doesn't count because it's generic, again, I point back to Morgan and Tharja. And there is a unique conversation between the two, where Kana makes Rajat cry because of how much the former loves her. She inherited Rajat's introversion and only wants to be at the festival for her mom, and probably her dad too. Rajat also wants to get rid of the bandage just for Kana. There's a strong mutual love. In the Rajat Japanese My Room conversation, there's a line where she literally just talks about her love for you. No creepy thoughts or anything. Just pure love. Rajat treats her loved ones better than Tharja. Refresh ourselves on the differences. Rajat is less sexy and stalks for protection in addition to her crush. Tharja is meant to evoke a more fan-servicey design and stalks for herself. Rajat is overall a less possessive person than Tharja and seems to value lives more. Tharja is more confident and uncaring of how she's perceived, unless they're trying to say she's nice. She also has a strong grasp of right and wrong. Tharja is more obsessed with Robin than Rajat is to Corin. While both love hexes, Tharja doesn't really care as much about the safety and even lives of others versus Rajat. Tharja has more supports about helping someone, and Rajat treats her loved ones better. I think it's clear I prefer Rajat, but this analysis has made me respect Tharja a lot more. Hopefully, I demonstrated a bit more why Tharja has so many fans. I hope I made Tharja only fans appreciate Rajat more and understand why some people say they're different. And for those of you who are neutral, I hope you can understand how anyone can like either. I love Rajat and some love Tharja. Both have good points and bad points, but neither are black or white characters. There's reasons to love both or one or the other. So I think I've shown that these characters are more so the same archetype than being the same person. Even Fire Emblem Heroes, known for getting characters wrong, got this down. Rajat's quotes are a lot calmer and nicer than Tharja's. Now, I'm not saying this makes Rajat better. These are just differences and why I like Rajat more. I feel they've left the same character, and more Rajat is another take on Tharja. With that out of the way, let's get into some more analysis. Like any Fire Emblem character, Rajat supports paint a picture of who the character is. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what happens in each support, because you can easily look it up. But I feel most, if not all, of Rajat's supports have at least something interesting to say about her. While I will be citing Japanese supports as well, remember that I cannot speak the language, so I don't know every difference, and forgive me if I'm mistaken on anything. Let's start with Kana. During the C support, Rajat heals Kana's cavity in exchange that Kana comes to her if he gets hexed. In Japan, she does it no strings attached. Rajat does come off as a bit cold to me, but she treats everyone like that. What I find interesting is that male Kana's mere existence is representative of the fact that Corin married someone else. Despite that, Rajat doesn't seem to hold it against him. Her B support has her giving her most grotesque threat, threatening to make Kana cough up frogs if he keeps following her. Ignoring the blatant hypocrisy, I find this confirmation that Rajat can do some truly nasty things with her hexes. She just chooses not to unless she's really annoyed. At least in the West. In Japan, she just gives a generic hex threat. However, she does mention in some of my castle conversations cursing to death, so yes, she can do some awful shit. She just doesn't. She also doesn't come up with the idea of asking Kana to ask Corin questions. Kana does, which she happily goes along with. The most interesting part of the support, in my opinion, is the A support. She apologizes for making Kana feel bad, for making him think that she only spent time with him because of his mom. She even considers him a friend. This shows that Rajat is not too proud to admit when she's wrong. She technically didn't even do anything. She never said that she only talked to him because of Corin. However, she still hurt his feelings, and she cared enough about that to apologize, which I find a mature thing about her. I'm sure some may find this a weird thing to point out, but it feels a bit odd for such an edgy character to be so open to apologize for hurting someone's feelings, you know? Next up, her father. She has a fun dynamic with him, in my opinion. Rajat, for very understandable reasons, is a bit bitter towards her father thanks to him leaving her in a deep realm. It's interesting to see her argue with him. She's very clearly hurt, and it contributes to why she's such a lonely person. While I'm on the topic, what's with Hayato hate? Maybe I'm biased, but I think this is a good showing for him. He realizes he hurt Rajat and accepts that he was childish with her. Rajat was so hurt by her loneliness that confronting it makes her cry. What a cutie. Now onto her mother's support. Rajat's mother says that Rajat wouldn't hurt anyone. While she can be mischievous and does go too far sometimes, it's rare she's actively malicious. Rajat was being blamed for the illness that attacked that village, but in spite of that, she still tried to help. It says a lot about her character, in my opinion. My sole concern wasn't their perception of me, it was their health. The most important thing was to find a cure before the sickness got out of control. All I really cared about was you trusting me. Rajat seems to only care about what people think if it's someone she really cares about. Not to mention, again, she was more focused on helping the people than trying to get them to like her. Shigure's support has her being a bit harsh, more so in the West, but reveals a very interesting tidbit about Rajat's past. In their C support, Rajat offers to help Shigure with his sadness using a hex almost immediately. She also gives condolences for him being sad about his deceased caretakers, then proceeds to ask about his attachment to them because she can't really relate. She then says she scared off her caretakers in the deep realms intentionally, but lies about the reason why. In her B support, despite her inability to relate to Shigure's love of his caretakers, she's still not saying anything rude. If anything, she seems confused or curious. She doesn't get defensive until Shigure starts assuming things about her. It's not until the A support where it's revealed Rajat scared off her caretakers to protect them from her magic, which she couldn't control properly yet. This is further evidence of how she doesn't seem to like hexing innocent people, or at least people she deems innocent. Rajat is Yandere, a fictional character who fits the archetype of being genuinely romantic, loving, kind, merciful, sparing, sweet, and gentle, but is at the same time brutal, psychotic, or deranged in behavior, to an extent. But honestly, she leans more towards being tsundere, a fictional character who fits the archetype of having cold and even hostile personality towards another person before gradually showing a warm and caring side over time. She doesn't like being vulnerable or opening up to others. She seems to want to be aloof. Why she's tsundere exactly is never really said. It could have something to do with how she was raised. She didn't have a lot of interactions with others, so perhaps she just got used to isolation and the like. However, that's just a guess. Move on to Dwyer. C support doesn't really have anything new to say about her character. It's just her being mischievous with him. You could argue her stealing tufts of his hair is creepy for the sake of making an evil doll. And it kinda is, but it's not a big deal to me. The B support isn't particularly revealing either. She just wants to help Dwyer, but it seems to be more so for practice or fun than attachment to him. It's really the A support that I want to talk about. Ignoring the humor in Rajat apparently being interested in playing God to quote Dwyer, this is the first support we've talked about that shows how self-conscious Rajat is. She asks Dwyer if he thinks she's creepy, to which he doesn't immediately respond, which upsets her. She actually seems to care about how she's perceived. She expresses being upset by saying you're just like everyone else. She seems to be in this weird place between wanting to be aloof but hating being seen as creepy. Let's talk about the first S support today. Hers was Dwyer. She lashes out and threatens to curse Dwyer if he doesn't tell her who he's crushing on. I believe in Japan she says she wants to curse whoever his crush is. Either way, it's a bit much, but I don't really mind it. Just another showing of Rajat's flaws. She's jealous, petty, and vindictive, and I like that. But again, it's a bit much. I originally thought the localization made this up, but apparently not. On to the next one. Shiro's support reveals that she doesn't like meat. How interesting. Friendship ended with Rajat. Shiro is my new comfort character. Rajat is a bit blunt about her feelings on meat, but otherwise, she's fine here. If anything, she's the victim here, with Shiro not respecting her boundaries. I like to point out she doesn't even threaten him with a hex here. She just leaves. She's not that trigger happy with her threats. Granted, her first line of Beast Support is a threat, but still, she only pulls the trigger when he starts talking about her body type. In the Japanese version, he literally says, "Meat is a very important source of nutrition for humans. If you don't eat a lot of it, you'll become skin and bones. It's especially important for women. Your boobs will never get any bigger." In the West, he says meat is an important part of your diet. If you don't eat any, you'll waste away. Heh, not that you need to worry about that. I mean, you're basically saying opposite things here. In Japanese, she needs to get bustier, and in the West, she's already plenty thick, I guess. But that's not the point. The point is that it's a very unnecessary comment to make, so he gets hexed. At least Shiro knows what he did wrong. In the A support, he gets a really bad runny nose for at least 4 days. As I mentioned earlier, this is an example of Rhajat won't go too far with her hexes, even when they deserve it in her eyes. And she implies that when she realized that Shiro was just worried about her and wasn't trying to be a jerk or ignoring her feelings, she says she'll lift the hex. Granted, she says maybe, and if the food is good, but considering what we've already established about Rhajat, I think she's just fronting. She also mumbles the part about being grateful that he was worried about her. Wow, what a great support for both characters. Good thing there's no S support to mess up. Yeah, in the S support, it's revealed that Shiro wasn't doing that because he was worried about her health. It was because he liked her and wanted some excuse to hang out. What? Such a sweet A support messed up by the S support, but whatever. This isn't a Shiro analysis, and it doesn't change how Rhajat reacts to someone caring about her. I used to hate this support actually, but upon finding out some localization differences and thinking on it, it's not that bad. In the Western version, she seems irritable for some reason and threatens to hex Kuragi for offering to help her. Yeah, in Japanese, she threatens to hex him because she perceives Kuragi saying, "You have a bad look on your face," as an insult. Yet another indication of Rajat's relationship with hexing people. Rajat stops Kuragi as he's about to leave, asking if he can get a mushroom for her. In the West, I'd like to remind you, after threatening to hex him for no good reason. But anyways, he offers to grab it. In the West, she basically shrugs her shoulders and says, well, if he fails, he lived a good life. She does not give a flying shit if he dies. What? The Japanese script of my source is correct says, yes, I anticipate your return. See you. I say, but will he be alright, I wonder. She shows concern for this guy she barely knows. She's not selfish as the localization likes to portray her as. In the B support, she says she half expected him to fall to his death. In the West, I mean. In Japanese, she says, I was really surprised about before. You very easily obtain that precious mushroom. I know she sends him out anyway in both versions, but the fact that she accepted that there's a chance he could die in the West while in Japanese she's worried is just... Fucking treehouse. I hate nature. Now to be fair, she apologizes for this in the West, but why did she do it in the first place? In both versions, she says she never thanked him, so she does so and apologizes that he, in the West, got her on her behalf, and in the East was covered in mud. Afterwards, regardless of version, they agree to go to the mountain together, which is sweet. Then the S support, where something interesting about Rhajat happens as I mentioned earlier. Rhajat reveals she hacked Kuragi to keep girls away from him, and only reveals that after he confesses to her. All can see that's shady, but Rhajat implies that she didn't know that was a bad thing. This goes back to Rajat's low grasp on morality. But to be fair, she also calls him pure after he says it doesn't bother him, so maybe she does know? Either way, we're on to Asugi. Comparing it to the Japanese version, Asugi doesn't actually nickname Rhajat. I think his nickname thing is a localization edition, and I think that's true of Gaius as well, but don't quote me on that. So Rajat's reaction to it is, by extension, localization. However, it's also another example of her sensitivity, so... I wouldn't call it the most out-of-character thing localization has done. Oddly enough, this support makes Asugi ruder. In the original script, he apologizes for wasting Rajat's time versus our version where he insults her and leaves. For once, Rhajat isn't really the victim of Treehouse. No differences that are really major for the B support either. Also, just another example of Rhajat's hacking only really being done as punishment. The A support is, yet again, an example of her punishment's not really being that awful. Sure, she follows him around as punishment to show how powerful the hexes are, which is creepy, but not really hurtful, I guess. Not much to say about this one, I'm realizing, besides the threat at the end of the A support being localization only. S support, I guess, is another example of Rhajat hacking someone without warning, but in her defense, she was trying to help Asugi there. That's all there really is to say about this one. Not much interesting information. Though I do wonder if Asugi's candy fascination is a localization edition. He doesn't really mention it in this support in Japanese, but it comes up a lot in English. I don't know if that's just this support or what, but whatever, onto one of my favorites. Rhajat spends this support worshipping Selkie for reasons that aren't clear at first. It's a more comical support, but doesn't really reveal anything interesting until the A support. Rhajat came up with the most convoluted method of making friends with Selkie. This truly showcases her social awkwardness and quirks. She could have just walked up to her and asked to be friends. Something I don't see others bring up though is how Selkie feels like the kind of person Rhajat would hate. She's so positive and energetic, yet Rhajat wants to be her friend. I feel this shows that Rhajat is a bit more tolerant, I suppose, than one would expect. A lot of her friendliness or whatever lines are localization only. I thought I'd have more to say about this one, but it's pretty simple. Her support with female Kana is only viewable if you marry her as male Corn. This is such a sweet support. Rhajat is flattered by Kana talking about demonic flowers. Rhajat considers using the flowers she got with Kana for a hex, but she couldn't do it. She loves Kana more than she loves hexes. Gosh! Yes, it's generic, but if they really wanted her to be a bad mother, they could've. Even pushing Tharja and Morgan aside, it's still wall-hearted Morgan. Like, they wouldn't have to change much, so I'm counting it as indicative of her character. Rhajat is said to have a terrifying temper, but now that I think about it, she's not that angry. This support is one of the few times where she's angry, and it's not anyone, it's that her hex not working. I do find this a nice support since Asama uses his tea to help Rhajat calm down. In Japanese, though, Rhajat mentions she's looking for an ingredient for her hex. In the West, she lost a charm that gives everyone bad luck but her. Did someone on the team hate this character? Or, I know it's played as a joke, but it feels like the joke is usually Rhajat does or says something shitty. Anyway, while it's a sweet support, it does more for Hazame than Rhajat, so like Selkie, not really much to say. If it may derail for a second, fuck Treehouse, man. I am a firm believer that if Rhajat was localized properly, she wouldn't be such a detested character. I don't think she'd be popular per se, nor would she be even close to Tharja's popularity, but I do think she'd have a modest fanbase. But for whatever reason, they decided to change some bits of dialogue, and believe you me, we will be talking about this again. On to another support, Mitama. This, like Selkie, is just really sweet. It's really just Rhajat finding common ground with her and the two becoming friends. And what do you know? Rhajat helps Mitama for no real reason, almost like she's a nice girl. Hell, she doesn't even know Mitama considers her a friend until later in the same rank, so she did this for a teammate, not a friend. Sadly, we're 3 for 3 on not much to say, but at the time of writing this, we're nearing a 6K word script, and at the time of recording this, a 30-minute video. So maybe that's a good thing. Let's move on to Kale-Dori. Surprise, surprise, Rhajat is more aggressive in Japan? Wow, this is like the only support where Treehouse tries to make Rhajat more likable. Not saying I agree with the decision, I'd rather they keep the original author's intent. It's just a bit surprising. The localized version is about Kale-Dori needing Rhajat's help to be more mysterious, and ends on Rhajat saying that Kale-Dori should just be herself. The Japanese version, well, Kale-Dori wants bigger breasts and asks Rhajat how she got her so big. Rhajat makes a hex that'll make her more confident so she can do weird things without being embarrassed. Kale-Dori refuses the gift, so Rhajat in their A support uses it on her, prompting her to swap between having no shame while taking off her clothes and being flustered. Sound familiar? It's all a big reference to a conversation Tharja and Cordelia have. It even ends with Kale-Dori saying she'll get her revenge, and it took an entire lifetime, but she did. Anyway, while the localized version is nice, I don't want to just take pieces from both versions just to make her look better. So to focus on the original, Rhajat did it because she went through all that trouble to make the hex only for Kale-Dori to reject it, so she decided to troll her with it. I don't think this is that big a deal, even if Rhajat is in the wrong here. And she does apologize, granted in a haha I'm sorry, rather than a I messed up I'm sorry kind of way. Is Ryan kind of like this? I like how Rhajat can be petty without being a straight up bad person. It shows that she's a flawed individual. Anyway though, who's next? Ooh, Forrest! This is my favorite support of hers actually. It's my OTP for her. But enough about that. This is just a really nice one, with Forrest trying to help Rhajat feel more confident, showing that she does have a lot of insecurities even about her appearance. The part about Rhajat being watched by someone though, and implying she hexed them, localization. I can see Rhajat shows off her creepiness a bit more here, but Forrest tastes like a champ. And the S support, so cute. I mentioned this before, but in Japan, Rhajat says she'll hex Forrest for not wanting to be her friend anymore, but then says she can't do it because she likes him. How sweet in her own way. Ah, Percy, cute little sun boy. Once more we see Rhajat being petty towards someone and hexing them for their troubles. She mentions that they were talking about her body, but Percy still calls this an overreaction, so maybe the clerk didn't mean it in a weird way. But regardless, Rhajat decides in the end not to curse the shopkeep, or Percy despite threatening to. In the B supports, despite her potentially being annoyed with Percy, she still heals his dragon. And that's after he insulted her by assuming she was going to kill him. She did threaten to curse him for it, but still, what's more, not so bad. Percy even seems to realize she's not so bad, even if she denies it. She also threatens to give Percy a fate worse than death if he's toying with her emotions in the S support, which is a lot, but still, not a bad support. Best non-Corn support, Ophelia. This is another one where Rhajat is a bit malicious, but Ophelia was warned. Plus, I mean, she does start the support by screaming at her that she's bad. I see where Rhajat reacts the way she does. Interestingly, Ophelia does win in the end by purifying Rhajat, even a bit. There's not really anything we haven't seen before in this support. It's the last one not counting Corrin, so I guess we've learned just about everything there is to learn about her. Let's talk about Corrin now. I'm gonna focus on the localized version / male Corrin's version. We'll talk about the WOW version later. I'm gonna be honest, I think I prefer the localized one, because some genius thought it'd be cute to say that male Corrin fell for Rhajat when she was a child. Same game where Corrin can marry Midori and Percy, so I guess it's not unheard of, but still gross. Anyway, let's move on from that, shall we? Rhajat does her Rhajat thing with her stalking. Makes Corrin uncomfortable, though Corrin is the one who remembers meeting Rhajat in the Japanese version, and the West is vice versa. Also, the usual Rhajat being more aggressive in the West, also the stalking 20% of the time is a localized line. What's frustrating about this support is that it implies Rhajat is the way she is because of trauma, but the S support retcons it until that's when Rhajat fell for Corrin. There's some interesting tidbits, but not much to say. I'll come back to this later. Let's be real, if you ship Rhajat, you probably ship her with the female MC anyway. That's all supports for now, so why don't we move on to her My Room lines? Rhajat is just being possessive, what a shock. There's a very sweet line in Japanese where she just talks about how much she loves Corrin, which is nice. Then asks how Corrin feels about her. I want to point out the line where she says, I know you belong to everyone, but I want you to only think of me. I don't think this line is too possessive, it's shockingly normal. I like it. She also mentions she'll follow Corrin wherever, even into hell. As usual, localized lines are a bit more harsh. Next, let's talk about her My Castle lines. Honestly, I had Miss Nenny line translate them, but there isn't really much of note. The only thing I noticed is that in localization, if you give Rhajat a bad gift, she says, you made your first mistake. Don't make it a habit. In Japanese, she still accepts and enjoys the gift, if a bit hesitantly. Lastly, I want to talk about her parent conversations. Not the support, but her unique DLC conversation she has with Hayato and all his potential wives. We'll start with Hayato. Rhajat is either messing with Hayato here, or Hayato is being a bit too sensitive, but either way, Rhajat reveals here that she's okay with being in noisy places, which she hates as long as it's with her dad. Female Corrin, can we skip this one? I mean, very few people are marrying Hayato anyway. Rhajat has a bit of an obsession with Corrin even if she's her mom. I see what they were going for, but no. That's weird. It should have been toned down. But anyway, not much to say here, Rhajat is just being emotional towards Corrin. Okay, this one sucks. Felicia, I get the joke here, but what? Rhajat is trying to get her mom fired so she could be Corrin's maid? Granted, she forgot to actually hex her since she inherited her mom's scatterbrain nature, but this feels out of character, I'm gonna be honest. Rhajat loves her mom. I don't see why she'd do that. The Rinka one. Now we're back on track. Rhajat wants to use some Flame Tribe spice to get along with people she normally hates, partially because of her not being good in groups. It shows she's willing to change. Sakura is fine, really just showing Rhajat's sweet tooth that she inherits from Hayato apparently. Also just Rhajat loving her mom again. Azura is the first of many to bring up Corrin. I noticed she brings her up more here than in her support. But to be fair, you're only going to see one of these convos per playthrough. The mental image of Rhajat jumping into Corrin's arms is adorable. Rhajat wants to visit the underworld. Very interesting. More Rhajat bonding with her mom. How about singing this time? Hana is weird, because she tries to hex her mom, which is very strange and kinda out of character. Hana doesn't even really do anything but try to explain some family history. At least Rhajat with a purse sounds cute. Orochi reveals that Rhajat has a collection of Corrin hair. Weird but not unexpected, admittedly. Hanoka has them wanting to fold origami together, which is precious. Satsuna, I originally took issue with the fact that Rhajat didn't care that her mom was stuck in a pit, but thinking more on it, that's kinda just the joke with her. No one really cares too much when she falls into a pit. Plus Rhajat is probably just used to it and knows she's okay, so that's probably why she doesn't really care. Oboro just makes me sad. Rhajat says she knows she's not attractive. She also has sewing skills if Oboro with her mom, which is cute. Kagero is interesting, just showing how Rhajat doesn't like being ordered around. She'll do things if she's asked, she just doesn't want to be forced. Effie doesn't really have any interesting info. Nick shows another example of Rhajat not having the best morals, since she was going to use the love potion on Corrin. I like to think she'd eventually realize it's wrong, but my headcanon isn't important here. She says she'll use it on Nyx, and is shocked that Nyx loves her more than anyone else. That's really depressing that she is so shocked that someone loves her. Mozu also shows how she wants to help people, saying she'll mostly use her hunted prey to, well, help people. Granted, she says mostly, but still. And that's all the parent conversations in this DLC. Still one more though, with Kana if Kana is her daughter. Firstly, she's still sweet to Kana here. Further proof that yes, she's a good mom. She's angry that bandits ruined Kana's smile. Kana inherits Rajat's introversion, but just like Rhajat, she still wants to be there because she loves her mom. Rhajat cries. Also, Kana the next too, which is neat. But yeah, super wholesome. Alright, we're done analyzing her character. There's a shocking amount to say about her, considering she's from Fates, a game known for its two-dimensional characters. I adore her. Rhajat is a kind, aloof, awkward soul. She cares about others a lot, even if she's bad at showing it. While she's petty and vindictive, she ultimately means well. Quite possibly the most divisive aspect of Rajat's character is the fact that she's the Sapphic option for FE Fates. I stand by what I said about not wanting to put down one character to lift another, but I want to talk about Soleil. She is commonly said to be the superior Sapphic in the game and should have been your option. I disagree with this assessment. There's actually a reason why she's not. The obvious answer is that she lost the conquest and the Sapphic option was lost to Hoshido. We can argue all day about whether that was a good idea or not, it wasn't, but if they wanted to do it like that, Soleil wouldn't have worked. Okay, so this is where I argue that Soleil is a homophobic caricature. The trope about her being an immature girl who dates women because of said immaturity. But honestly, I can't find a source on that, so I'd rather not spread misinformation on her. Whether that's true or not, it doesn't really change my opinion. Anyway, I'd argue that Soleil is more problematic than Rajat. Do I even need to mention Soleil's support with Ophelia? It's so creepy. I don't care that she apologizes, because they make Ophelia apologize too. Also, who sexually harasses someone multiple times because they're nervous? To the point where she says she's going to masturbate in her body when they swap? Sorry, but don't try to come up with weird justifications or tell me your headcanons about why she does this. I don't care. Even if you're right and she had a reason aside from creeping, it doesn't make it okay. Rajat never does anything on this level. This is admittedly less awful, but in Soleil's support with Ignatius, she's literally stalking women so she can pinch her as hard as she can. Ignatius asks if she's hunting and she says, "You could say that." I believe in Japanese she says, "to hug them as hard as she can," which is less bad, but still weird. I've always wanted to point out this double standard. Because that's not even getting into her Japanese support with Forrest, where she chases him because she thinks he's a cute girl. At one point, he says, "You're looking at me like a beast who found his prey." She even tells him that if he is really a boy, which he says multiple times in the support, he needs to prove it by bathing with her? Their A support ends with her feeling that in spite of him being a boy, she still thinks he's cute, so she'll still chase him. And don't get me started on the line, "Yeah, sorry Forrest, I chased you around everywhere, and it's all because I mistook you for a girl." Ah, that makes it okay. Soleil, in my opinion, is way creepier than Rajat. If you like Soleil, that's cool. If you like her more than Rajat, cool. But please don't act like Soleil is an unproblematic queen or whatever. But that's enough Soleil slander for one day. That's not the point of this section. It's just something I wanted to address. I more so wanted to talk about Rajat and Korn's relationship. I ship Rajat with Korn, and I wanted to explain firstly why it's not a problematic ship, and secondly, why I ship it. I wrote a post about it on Tumblr that I will read for you all. I feel some people interpret the Deep Realms as this character is only a few months old, but they have the bodies of adults. This is not true at all. The second generation live their life at normal rates from their perspective. It's just that Deep Realms and Fateslandia move at different rates, which is why Rajat is now older than Hayato. Rajat mentions that her Deep Realm moves at an even faster rate. She says, "It was only after I left my Deep Realm to voyage here that I discovered our time flowed at an accelerated rate, a rate far faster than the other Deep Realms. If I had remained there, I'd be a white-haired old lady by now. That's how I know I'm older than you. I may actually be older than Mother, too." This implies Rajat is one of, if not the oldest second gen. For all we know, she could be older than Shigure. That sibling support never says who the older one is between them. She even mentions she might be older than Hayato's wife. Of course, Hayato can marry Nyx and Orochi. It's very unlikely she's older than them. However, it does state that she's not a child. In my opinion, I can't see her being younger than 17, and even that might be lowballing it. The canon status of Fire Emblem Heroes is very debatable, but it also refers to Rajat as an adult. Let's say Rajat isn't an adult, though. Korn doesn't have a canon age. Korn could be somewhere between 17 and 19 for all we know. All we know is that she's older than Takumi and Leo, who lack canon ages as well but are teens at the youngest, and Sakura and Elise, who are both young, short for my age, adult you technically are, be damned. Hell, Rajat could be the older of the two, so they're both adults or at least around the same age is a pretty safe assumption. Now when they met, Rajat was a child. This is a canon fact. But according to their Japanese support, you don't remember your childhood, but a long time ago, I visited the secluded village where you lived just once, and you met us. Korn did not raise or really even interact with Rajat as a child. He played with her once, saved her, and they didn't meet again until she was an adult. Lastly, I want to talk about Rajat being a predatory lesbian. For those who don't know, there's a homophobic trope where Sapphic women are portrayed as sexual predators. I can get why people say this is what Rajat is at first glance. Stalking is wrong, let me throw that out there. But I feel calling Rajat predatory is pushing it. Rajat describes her stalking as watching over Corin. The phrasing sounds like she's watching their back to protect them. Still wrong, arguably a reach, but not predatory. Not to mention that Selkie's support with Rajat makes it clear Rajat is very socially awkward. She's not being malicious here. Predatory implies malice in my opinion, and Rajat is a girl with a crush who expresses it admittedly in a problematic way. This isn't an attempt to convince you to ship it if you don't. It's cool if it makes you uncomfortable. However, it is not abusive, it is not an age gap, it is not a pedo ship. TLDR, Rajat and Corin are around the same age, Corin only interacted with child Rajat once, and Rajat isn't predatory. With that disclaimer out of the way, why do I like this ship? Honestly, a major factor is that it's the first Sapphic option in a Fire Emblem game. Rajat is not the first WOW in FE. That honor I believe goes to Heather, but Rajat can enter a WOW relationship with Corin, which is the important part. As far as the content of this ship, it's mainly their S support, but the whole support is sweet. Corin seems a bit creeped out by Rajat, and who wouldn't be? But even in the beginning, she says, "Oh, well, you know I love talking to you too, right?" She then follows it up with, "But, how about we get some more people?" Granted. But it shows that even from the jump, she likes Rajat, even if she finds her a bit creepy. She invites her to a tea party, which is just the cutest fucking shit. In the B support, Corin understandably asks for Rajat to act normal, but after seeing how that's worse than how she usually acts, she apologizes. I find it sweet that she recognizes that that wasn't right. She says, "Sorry for pushing my values on you." In the A support, Rajat says she can never do anything to make Corin sad, which is pure. This is also where it's revealed that Corin and Rajat will meet again in the next life, heavily implied to be Robin and Tharja. While I don't ship those two nearly as much, I find the idea that they'd find each other regardless of universe very sweet. Corin even asks Rajat if she'll recognize her in the next life. Honestly, I could be looking too deeply, but I think Corin started catching feelings between the B and A support, and that's shown here. She even says she likes Rajat as she is now when Rajat says she hopes she'll be a normal girl in the next life. Oh gosh, it's that support. Rajat says she doesn't want to meet Corin in the next life. Corin interprets this as Rajat hating her, to which Rajat says, "No! I could never, I could never hate you. That's so..." Corin is, for some reason, surprised when Rajat confesses. I don't get that part. Rajat seems to have some internalized homophobia going on, since she wants to be a man in the next life so she can be strong, and have Corin love her. She even assumes Corin is disgusted by her. She also says that if they wait for the next life, that won't be her anymore. Rajat almost faints for being so happy once Corin confesses. You're telling me this isn't the cutest shit? Corin calls her her greatest love in the world. It's so cute, so wholesome, so fluffy. Ah! Shout out to my friend Nennyline, who isn't a FE fan and initially didn't seem to care for the character, read this version of the support in the localized version. She was as heartbroken as me. It felt so vindicating. That doesn't really explain the chapter title, though. Prototype Edeleth. Let me begin with I love Edeleth. It's so cute and wholesome. This isn't a dig at them, but I feel these two ships are more similar than a lot of people would like to admit. Rajat and Edelgard are very attached to Corin and Byleth. One could argue it transcends time and space, given how Edelgard loves Byleth regardless of route. Plus, Edelgard sharing Byleth's crest. There is a bit of an odd element to both, the first being a first-gen shipped with a second-gen, and the latter having a teacher-student dynamic. They both make it very obvious they're into the Avatar, and both Edelgard and Rajat have a thing going on, an abnormality. Rajat is just weird, and Edelgard is raging against the heavens. I don't know. It just feels like Rajat walked so Edeleth could run. So it makes me sad how the former doesn't get a lot of love or respect. But hey, what can you do? Let me make it clear. I totally understand hating Rajat. She's a stalker. She's heavily based on a pre-existing character. And even if you like her, if you don't like shipping her with Corin, that's fair too. Their dynamic can be seen as problematic. Arguably it's unhealthy. But this character and Chip mean a lot to me, and I hope I've explained why. I hope I've made it clear why she's my favorite fictional character, and that there are reasons to like her. She does have good qualities, way more than you'd think on the surface. And as I've explained here, a lot more of her negative traits are from the localization. A shame really that Rajat's reputation has been forever sullied. But hey, I hope I've made a difference even a little bit. And besides, now other Rajat fans can see a character they like talked about positively. So I see this as a win-win. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much. I really appreciate the people who will engage with this video in good faith. Hell, if you hate her but still watch this, I appreciate that too. If you'd like to see more Rhajat content, perhaps check out my AO3. I've got quite a few core Rhajat pieces there. I don't know how often I'll upload videos, but I don't think I'll do this full-time or even part-time. But when I really want to talk about something, I'll probably upload. In conclusion, Rhajat good.